From underneath the door comes a wisping wind of white mist, and a hand crashes through the window, and a head crashes through the window, and it just has to ask the same question that is asked each and every week. It's, hey, did you see this one?
The year is 2024. And two friends once again invite you to join them in revisiting, or discovering for the first time, the masterworks of a filmmaker who transcends genre, whose horrors have lurked in the dark, broken free from the ice, crawled straight from hell, or even pulled themselves from the very pits of a mad mind, who showed us the hidden corners of Chinatown, sent a man from the stars, and dragged us to New York, LA, and even Mars. Nearly unmatched as a genre filmmaker. Once again, Hey, Did You See This One? Invites you to look upon the works of a genius. We present to you Jan Carpenter's In the Month of Madness.
I'm spooked and I'm freaked, and it's January, it's 2024. Welcome to the new year of Hey, Did You See This One? I'm joined as always by my co-host Steve Waters. I am Jason R. Phillips. Welcome to the show. It's Jan Carpenter presents Jan Carpenter's In the Month of Madness. It is a month dedicated to the auteur, genre-bending director, John Carpenter. We do know his name is John and not Jan. We are just being funny and hilarious. That said, we have Ben Mason back on the show. Welcome back, Ben. Welcome back. Welcome back. Hey, Ben. Welcome back.
Welcome.
Hello.
If you are somebody who's watched this show in the past, you'll know that 1 year ago, Ben was on for the Escape From trilogy. And of course, it really is only a 2 movies. And then we sort of posited that Ghosts of Mars was supposed to be a Snake Plissken thing at some point. But instead we got, what was it, Ice Cube instead?
I think he's sort of the insert for that character, yeah. But no one will ever know.
No one will ever know. He'll be on his deathbed like, I wanted it to be Kurt Russell the whole time.
I don't even know if it was him that wanted that, though. Again, we'll never know.
We'll never know.
I also hope that's not the sound that Carpenter goes out on.
No, he'll go out playing a synthesizer. The heart monitor will be like a do-do-do.
That's
Perfect.
Actually incredible.
Love it.
This week, this month is special because, well, Ben, we did it. This is the 3rd time we're doing this now. We didn't have Ben on the first time. Ben got on 3 times last time. But now that we're in the guest era, you're going to have a little bit more room to, tap dance with your
shimmy and shake.
Shimmy
Yeah,
and
we're not gonna typecast you as the Snake Plissken guy anymore.
You're the fog guy now.
Yeah.
But there are some new things that have been added to the show since you were on last. We have a new segment that we've been doing where I put up an image from the poster and I have people on social media guess. Last week, surprisingly, people got it. This week, people got it a little bit easier, but still it was pretty elusive because I think this is one of his lesser known films, or people know the 2006 remake a little bit better. But this is Fan Guessing Game.
I forgot there was a remake, so I don't know if that's true.
Congratulations! You have successfully guessed the correct answer, which is the answer you provided. Congratulations!
That's right, World's Fair man. Congratulations. The following people got... Wow, it was actually only 3 people that got it right, and one thing that I think that is funny. Craig Webster, friend of the show, previous guest, just wanted to say, I am Craig Orr, harbinger of podcast hosts, because I learned this week that our old co-host, Kaylin, we started having guests when he was still on the show, and shortly before he left, Craig was the final guest to be on before we switched over to the new format. He was the first and last guest of season 1, if you will. So that was a fun
Season 1, comprised of 100 episodes.
100 episodes.
It's like Doctor Who.
Yeah. Aaron Hurdle, friend and former guest of the show, he wanted to shout us out and how proud he is of us. Our ability to dedicate ourselves to our passion is admirable. I just make jokes. I just make fart jokes. I just go, hey guys, did you see this one? And every week, and Steve hates it when I use that sound effect, so I like to use it lots.
Oh, I don't hate it.
Oh.
Okay. Maybe in certain capacities I do. Oh.
Okay.
Isn't that the sound of a silo falling over?
It is.
Or a water tower?
If you're on TikTok, it is. Michael Nah, new friend of the show. He subscribed to our show last night, I noticed, and he likes what we're doing. He said, be excellent to each other and party on dudes, which I couldn't agree more with. And finally, one funny thing that Jacob, former guest and friend of the show, when I put the picture up, it's what you see behind me. But I only put like the part with Jamie Lee Curtis's face and like the hand in the smoke. And he said, the door that makes you come.
Oh.
That was Fan Guesses, ladies and gentlemen. Fan Guesses. This has been another edition of Fan Guesses. I don't know if we're not going to do the song for
He also guessed that same title for Showgirls.
The door that makes you come. Fantastic. So before we move on here, I would like to basically just let everybody know that the first 100 episodes are in audio format now. You can find them on Apple Podcasts, Anchor FM, and Spotify. And as of tomorrow, YouTube. I figured out how to put all of the episodes in audio format on YouTube in one fell swoop. So that'll be available. Additionally, you can find all the video episodes on YouTube. They're all up there. Most of them are on Twitch. Just look us up when, like, the Google SEO is not bringing us new people, but you can find all of our stuff out there. This is your call to action. Go subscribe to us at Superkicked. That's a different project that I do. And that's different stuff, brother. Hey, did you see this one? Hey, did you see this one? Everywhere around the internet. So, without further ado, let's talk about our brief history, shall we? Our brief histories with the film The Fog.
A brief history.
That's right. I can't believe I misspoke and talked about that.
Yes, honestly, I used to work at EB Games like 10 years ago, and sometimes when I pick up my phone, I still have the urge to say, EB Games, where you can trade and save. Steve speaking, how may I help you?
Empire Records open until midnight.
Yeah. That's a reference to a movie on a movie podcast. I love it. So it is actually a tradition. I haven't made it a tradition. It is now officially a tradition for the guest to go first. So, Ben, why don't you tell us about your history with the film The Fog starring fucking Tom Watkins?
Atkins.
Tom Atkins.
My history with the movie starts with the film novelization, um, which actually has more information than the film itself. So when I watched the movie, I was confused as to why they didn't include some of the info that the book had. Um, I'm not a big fan of film novelizations. I mean, like with horror, they're fun because you always get a little bit more than you get into film, like specifically The Fog, but like Halloween 2 and stuff like that. Um, so I don't remember when I first saw the movie. It was definitely after Halloween, and I remember then being kind of bored by it because in a 90-minute film, there's not a whole lot that really happens.
Yeah.
But when it does, it is more than sufficient. It just took me a long time to go back and revisit it and truly appreciate it for what it is. So for me, for the longest time, this was probably one of the most boring John Carpenter films I had ever watched. And now it's one of my favorite.
Interesting.
Fantastic. Actually, it's funny that you brought that up. We're going to get into it more in the body. But I basically have very similar thoughts to that. But this is one of my favorite John Carpenters now.
Mm-hmm.
But Steve, why don't you hit us with your brief history?
Brief history. Well, one thing I can say is that every time I tell people that The Mist is one of my favorite movies ever made, they often think that I'm talking about this movie or the remake of this movie. And I'm like, no, not the one with ghost pirates. I'm talking about the one with monsters that come from Planet X or whatever. But yeah, I don't really remember the first time I watched this. It's similar to what you were saying, Ben, where I remember watching a bunch of his movies when I was a teenager, but I didn't really go in any particular order because I wasn't huge into like filmographies at the time. But I was like, oh, I like this director. I guess I'll watch all of his stuff. And I just sort of went through the list of the ones that are the most popular first, and then went down the list that way. And it took me a while to get to this one, and I don't really have a solid memory of watching it for the first time.
Yeah.
But like you, this one for a while was very boring to me. As boring as watching fog roll in, I'd say. But I don't think that way anymore. I actually quite like it, and I didn't really have the most thorough watching of it today, which is unfortunate because I haven't seen it in a while. But I was enjoying it, and I am looking forward to watching it again. Yeah, that's as brief as I can get it, I guess.
It's pretty brief. That's great. Psychra in the chat says, get this hack off your show, which is really funny because isn't that your co-host? And,
yeah, it definitely is.
Leon made sure to correct him and say the hacks were on the show, fam, and that's right. We all hacks all the time here on Hated to See This One. I don't know what I'm doing or talking about, but we put together this little pod show each and every week, and here we are, and we're doing it. My history with the show is I watched it yesterday. All right, moving on. I will elaborate a little bit. I do recall.
I mean, that's your experience with most of his movies, I think, so far.
Yeah.
This is our third year doing John Carpenter month, and
that's a shame.
It really is.
It's a shame.
But
it is a shame, but he's watching them now. I'm forcing him to watch all of them, even if it takes 10 years.
I'm seeing it through a different lens, though, than I would have probably in different times. Like, I really wish that I had seen Chinatown.
Mm-hmm.
Little Trouble in Big China. I wish I had seen that like when
Still not the right title, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Big
we'll
Trouble,
go with it.
Little China and Big Trouble. It's like
Little
works.
China, you're in big trouble.
You're in big trouble, mister. That is the era when I would have probably enjoyed it the most. That, of course, was a reference to Full House. And when I was watching like Ninja Turtles 2, like at that age, I think that movie would have blown my shit. Watching it now, I still loved it, but I couldn't help but wonder why I didn't just like own it on VH and have the VH copy all distorted and broken from watching it repeatedly. That said, this movie, I kind of remember the remake coming out because it has the what's-her-face from Lost in it, and it's around 2006 that came out.
I don't know if I've seen the remake, to be honest.
Yeah, it was in 2005. I want to say, I forget the guy's name from Smallville, the lead.
Oh,
Wellington?
Wellington?
Well, sure.
Tom
Superman.
Wellington
Superman
Bellington.
starred.
Super guy.
I'm actually gonna watch that with Leah and I are gonna watch that after recording here tonight. So
Nice.
I'm
Nice.
curious. No spoilers. I
This
assume
fog
there's
rolls
fog.
in and everybody falls asleep. But there are other movies in this sort of genre that I feel like people get it mixed up with, like The Mist and the remake, like I said, and then that Ghost Ship movie seems like it's might have a similar plot. I don't know. I've never seen it, but I've seen the cover of it, and it looks like
You're like, there's
Yeah.
fog on the cover, so therefore.
and a ship.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much it for me. So the next thing that we've been doing that's new, Ben, and this one's going to be interesting because it's just director talk. We're going to kind of talk about John Carpenter a bit. The next couple weeks, though, I might come up with more pointed segments, or we'll keep it brief, just because we are doing a director's month. So the director segment might get a little boring for people who watch every week. But without further ado, this is director speak.
All right. Quiet on set. Are we rolling? Okay, let's shoot this piece of shit.
Sound. Speed.
Action!
Tom Welling is correct. That is the name of the actor man who plays the Superboy.
Perfect.
Well, John Carpenter, it's John Carpenter month. What can I say? I've seen at least 10 of his movies, at least 11 of his movies. He's got such hits as Little Trouble in Big China. What say you?
I was like, is that the only other movie you can remember?
No, I mean, the Escape movies are great. Ghost of Mars was kind of whatever, but the gems are the genre bender weirdo ones, like Prince of Darkness and the one where the author goes to the town where everybody's trying to eat his face.
In the Mouth of Madness.
In the Month of Madness. Yep, that's right. Set you up for that one, didn't I?
Yep.
I mean, we're probably going to talk about him quite a bit this month, as we have in the last couple of years. I think it was They Live episode, or was that They Live? I can't remember. We went on a long rant about John Carpenter one year, but I mean, in terms of this movie specifically, I know that he was inspired by it via like a trip to Stonehenge that he had taken with his like writing partner at the time, Deborah Hill, who I believe that we're also dating.
She produced this, didn't she? And co-wrote it?
Yeah, I think.
Co-wrote, yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious to know if that novelization that you read was written by John Carpenter, if it was like they just took the script and fleshed it out.
No, I don't believe it was.
Right.
I think they just hired another writer to.
A ghostwriter, yeah.
Exactly.
But I mean, that's kind of always fun to learn when you learn about how these sort of weirdo projects come in, right? Where it's like, okay, what's the simple idea is a fog rolls in, and what if something comes in with the fog? That's really cool. And I assume in a place like Stonehenge, seeing a big thick fog rolling in over the countryside would be pretty eerie to look at.
pretty sure your first reaction is like, oh, we're all dead.
Yeah, that fog is going to kill us.
We're not getting out of here.
Special effects wise, in 1980, I imagine like the shots of the beach, which I want to talk about the fucking cinematography of like the landscape during the body of the episode, but the special effects for the fog rolling in and the fact they keep talking about it glowing was a really cool way for them to be able to do this like superimposed fog effect. And then all of the weird little, like he's got an eye for like reversing things, so it just looks weird and spooky. And and the fog never felt like I know it's cheesy to say like, oh, the city was like a character, but the fog actually felt like a character in this movie, and you knew that it was unpredictable, and he made it that way. Like John Carpenter just has this amazing way to turn a low budget sort of vibe into something a lot bigger and better. Like look at Halloween. Like the original Halloween movie is like a mind prison for many kids of that era and later, right? Spoiler alert, I like this better than Halloween. We'll get to yeah, that's right. I said it here to two Halloween fans. But
that's fine. You're allowed to like whatever you like, Jason. And it's not gonna severely piss me off.
It might severely piss Ben off because I know how he feels about the first Halloween.
I mean, I can see, we've had this conversation in the past. I can see why watching Halloween for the first time in your middle of your 30s would not be as exciting as, watching one of the Halloween remakes or something, because they're visually more like, I don't know. They do the thing where it's like everything has to be smeared in like gloss to make it look good or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the old movies can be difficult to watch, and the pacing is way different now in horror movies than it was in his heyday, including this movie. And it is technically a horror movie, but doesn't feel that way entirely throughout.
His whole style with the changing genres and stuff. This movie is a more standard horror, in my opinion, especially after watching Stay Alive last week, which is pretty much by the numbers horror with just like a gimmick. This one feels a lot more in it. It only feels like a single genre thing. The difference is he doesn't succumb to all the tropes. He shows the gore and sometimes cuts away. He manages to just give an eerie vibe of just showing an empty room or like a liminal space, just down a road with some fog. Like I was like, I don't know why I'm so unsettled by this. Probably his score that he also did himself. He did the music for this film as well. So
Well, I think that's why we love him so much on this show, is because he's not just sort of a gun for hire director for the most part. It's like each project is a part of him and he creates them from the ground up, right? So he's writing the story. He's heavily involved with the casting. He does the music and he knows exactly what kind of music he wants to make for these, even though like his music can be samey. I love it so much. That recording that we played at the beginning of this episode, I was like, I need to find the most John Carpenter music I can find without us getting hit by John Carpenter himself being like, you can't use my music.
John Carpenter just busting through the door and being like, stop that.
Speaking of the music, you have to admit that the main theme for The Fog is very similar to Halloween.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. I made a note about that. That's when I was like, I like this movie better, in fact.
It's just different enough to be, I think it is, the music to this is better than Halloween. It's just not as iconic.
Yeah, I think the Halloween theme kind of lives in everyone's minds. It's one of those ones like Star Wars or something where you could play it on a piano and people will immediately recognize what it is. Some people even just connect that theme to Halloween, the holiday, not the movie,
Like I had a sorry, go ahead, Ben.
No, the one thing that really catches me off guard about this film, and no one ever brings it up, this is his only ghost movie. It is a perfect ghost film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the ghosts don't take the forefront. It's the characters trying to figure out what's going on. And the ghosts are the ones that carry the plot along without demanding your attention the entire time.
Yeah, not even the movie Ghosts of Mars has ghosts in it.
It's these
right?
weird cannibalistic alien weirdos.
Yeah.
Cool.
But
well,
it's just a fantastic ghost film. We don't really get those that often.
Yeah, and I mean, there's something scary about fog. Like, just in general, fog. You can't stop fog. What are you going to do? Get a big fan? I don't think so. It's not going to work. You'll be able to display some of it.
Living on the east coast of Canada,
right?
Living on the ocean, there are times where the fog is so thick you can't see 30 feet in front of you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So there's no idea what's happening on the other side. Obviously, nothing. But if you want to live in a horror-filled world, not knowing what's 30 feet in front of you is terrifying. And
it is,
they pulled that off in this movie perfectly.
Yeah,
I love fog, though. I love it so much. It's such a good, like, I get excited when fog happens in real life. I'm like, ooh, fog. So happy.
Ben grew up in Tantallon, Nova Scotia, so that's like fog in this movie.
Right, like every day there's just a huge cloud of fog.
You can actually see it roll in, like the way you'd see it roll in this movie. It's like the fog wall or whatever they call it. Like that's
I grew up on the shoreline of the ocean in St. Margaret's Bay, so you could see some pretty crazy things happen. Like you see this fog wall roll in, and then you hear a whale in the distance, and you're like, that's a monster coming for all of us.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But that's more like the mist. And we're talking about the fog.
Sorry, you can hear the pirates screaming.
There you go.
Yarr.
Yarr. Before we move to the body here, we're gonna talk at length about John Carpenter all month. It will probably circle back to his ability to direct the shit out of anything he puts his hands on. At the end of the episode, stay tuned. We're gonna have a little Steve put together a little video that's been up on our YouTube page, but I'd like to play it at the end of every episode so people can see us gush about him even further. And also to answer your guys' question about who wrote the novelization, it was somebody by the name of Dan Etchison, mercenary horror and sci-fi author, pen for hire.
Very good.
Says Noel in the chat. But with that, how about you guys? Do you guys want to look at a sweet body?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Ho, 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 ho! Everybody back up, because here comes the body of the episode.
This is, of course, the body of the episode where we talk freeform about the film at large. This is basically the podcast segment of the podcast. It's all the podcast. All of it is the podcast. None of it is the podcast. It's time is a flat circle.
This is going great.
We're gonna be here. We're gonna get it done. I have probably
Jason always complains about the length of the episode, but then he'll go on like a rant like that.
just take up, just waste air for 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But I tried to take less notes than I normally do. Also, the runtime of this movie is like 89 minutes, so it's content. It's both content dense and content light, and I say that because content dense wise, there's no wasted movement. Lacking content in that there's a lot of people like looking at fog.
Yep.
So it depends on how you look at it. Basically, we start the movie off, and I'm immediately going to do this because I couldn't believe this happened. I think this is the first time this has ever happened to us.
That's when they said the name of the movie in the movie.
We get a title drop in this movie from the old man says the fog at 1 minute and 55 seconds. I believe this is like last week with Stay Alive where they say the name of the movie about 7,000 times.
Yeah.
But
I mean, in a movie about fog where there's fog everywhere and it's called The Fog, you're no doubt going to hear the words "the fog" a lot.
So
The fog is coming for you.
I didn't keep track, but I would venture to bet that they said the fog in every scene,
Yeah.
sometimes multiple times. We also get he's telling a story to a group of kids at Spivey Point. A ship was cruising along, and essentially. Steve, why don't you recap the story from the beginning of the movie because I'm blanking on the specifics.
Of the whole movie?
No. Of like what the ghost story is. I wrote down.
He's basically
21st of April, Spivey Point.
Yeah, he's basically, it's just, a ghost story being told by like a sea captain kind of, where he's got his captain's hat on, they're around a fire, and he's just recapping the story of a ship that sank, and the lost souls would come in on the fog and murder everybody. Basically what happens in the movie. He's basically telling us what's going to happen in the movie. He's spoiling the movie for us.
That's when he said the movie in the movie. Noel in the chat, are there spoilers? Yes, there will be spoilers.
I mean, this is just one of many reshoots or additional shooting they had to do.
Yeah, it feels like it, but I don't understand why. I guess maybe people were confused as to why they were coming from. They're like, well, why are there ghosts coming? And it's like, okay, well, here's an old man telling you a story, but it's like you could just figure that out.
Yeah, that's where I got mixed up because I forgot he's just telling the original ghost story that tells us what's going to happen. I got messed up in the specifics because when the father gets the book and he's reading it, that's when we find out the why of it all. So yeah. Right. So the fog comes in, wreaks havoc. The dead's gonna rise is basically what he says. If I would have just read one more line of my notes.
So the actor playing the old man, I thought it was Donald Pleasance for a second, but it's not, right? Like it just looks and sounds like him.
Is it John Carpenter?
Donald Pleasance is like, it's not John Carpenter. John Carpenter's in the movie though.
Playing the guy telling the story?
Yeah.
It's John Houseman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I had just watched, I've been editing like all day, and I'm just staring at Donald Pleasance's face because he's in like every early Carpenter movie.
Pretty much.
And I was like, is it him? He's just wearing a captain's hat and he has a beard? But I was wrong.
So I was looking for this movie, and this brings us to the shot of like the title shot, if you will. And it's a really good shot of like that rolling beach. I got kind of Jaws vibes from this movie a little bit at times.
Definitely. Yeah.
But when the fog pops up on the screen and you get the beach in the background and the word the fog, it's captivating. But something interesting that happened to me when I was looking for this movie, I ended up renting it off like Google or Prime or something. But I found a YouTube version of the movie, but it was 2 hours of just that shot.
Oh.
I don't know if it was repeating. It looked like they had like made it themselves, but it was exactly the same. Anyway, I'll never forget that. And it was 2 hours and 9 minutes long. And as
Which
you
is
know,
like 40 minutes longer than the movie.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I kept scrubbing through to be like,
does the movie start somewhere in here?
No, it never did.
You're sifting through the fog.
And then he just went back and watched the whole thing.
Yeah. Just to make sure.
Yeah. I highly recommend anybody who has seen the movie and likes it, or hasn't seen it and they're curious, pick up the Scream Factory Blu-ray. The transfer is amazing and the special features are phenomenal. It is definitely worth the purchase.
Well, I was going to say, I think that's the version that is on Amazon to rent, because although it didn't have the Shout Factory logo at the end in the credits, which it usually does, but the transfer of that HD copy was fucking phenomenal. And I'll mention it now. I was going to mention it when we got into it a bit, but if they didn't talk if they didn't speak the way they spoke in this movie, like that, like 80s 70s, like they all kind of talk like almost a transatlantic, like old acting. Acting. There was a lot of that in this movie too. Like, I am saying my lines as an actor. The thing that I noticed is it could be a period piece made in the 90s to be the 80s or later even. It was that crisp, and that's rare. Yeah. Because we watched once again Stay Alive last week, and I watched a DVD rip, and it looked like ass. Like,
that was just a bad. Also, those movies are shot digitally, so transfers don't look as nice as film transfers do.
Well, look at 28 Days Later, the worst Blu-ray transfer you will ever see.
But that was shot on video, I think, too. It wasn't even shot digitally.
On a Sony Red. It was digital, I believe, but it's terrible, absolutely terrible.
I watched 28 Days Later on I think Netflix, and it was just fine though.
Was it? Was it really?
I have it on Blu-ray, and it even looks like ass.
Yeah.
But you were talking about how crisp everything looked. We have to mention the fact that Dean Cundy is a cinematographer on this movie. And you look at all of the work he's done with Carpenter. Jason, all of the movies that we've covered of his that you say look beautiful were all done by the same cinematographer.
Oh, okay.
So
he knows how to light stuff really well.
Exactly. Yeah.
And he also just framing is great. This movie, the storytelling visually is so great. From even just like the drop. When the priest, closes the door and we pan over and we see the shadow of him taking a sip of the wine, and does it make sense logically? No, but does it look sick? Yes.
Another scene like that is when he appears out of the shadow, just like seemingly out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But even the shot of Stevie walking down the stairs or the steps toward the lighthouse, you could just pause that and like that would be the perfect desktop wallpaper. Yeah. It's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, and when she's driving,
he's a master.
She's driving up and around, and you see the ocean in the background, just like rolling green fields and hills. Like this is like watching a shitty version of this wouldn't do that justice. It's a rare time when watching like a upscaled later, like HD remaster or transfer that lets those things pop, lets the colors pop. Here's the thing that I've noticed about TV and film. A lot of the time, they're like, it's so hot out today, it's blistering, the sun's out and we're all sweating, and then it looks dark. Like it looks overcast. This is one of the few films I've seen recently where it's daytime, it's sunny, and it looks sunny in the daytime. I find there's a lot of movies. I don't know if you guys agree with that, but that's my personal opinion. It's a TV thing mostly. I feel like people who make movies know how to, make a daytime shot and a nighttime shot, unless it's an old Western where the nighttime just has that filter.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's
Day
a lot
for
of
night.
movies, yeah, where they have to shoot day for night, and rarely does it look good. There are movies where more recently, actually, Nope, they do a lot of day for night, and it actually looks quite good.
It
And,
does. You're
and
right.
yeah, and I kind of did a little bit of a dive on that to check if they had even done it because I was like, it feels like that what they're accomplishing in terms of visuals for Nope would be impossible to do if they shot at night without like having generators in the middle of the desert, like and shooting something that's a mile away. Um, and it stylistically looks good, but yeah, it rarely do you find day for night that looks good. Another 28 weeks later, there's a whole sequence that's day for night, and it looks like shit. It's terrible.
That movie looked bad. I watched the two of them like back to back in the summer, and the second one I was going, this is the same universe? Anyway,
Well, it wasn't directed by the same person,
no, not
and
at
I don't
all.
think the same cinematographer was working on it. But
Yeah.
the opening of that movie looks and feels a lot like the first
Phenomenal.
one, and it's because it's that opening sequence is directed by what's his
Danny
name?
Boyle.
Danny Boyle, yeah.
It's interesting you brought up Nope, because I think Jordan Peele, once all said and done, after he has 10 movies under his belt, he might be a similar to John
He's got a
Carpenter.
Carpenter vibe, man.
Because
He's on his way.
the way he sees things, the way he films things, the way he tells stories, and then he'll go put his name on something that he believes in, and it's kind of like John Carpenter doing that. And they have the same vibe, like that anthology with the 3 movies that you said he just kind of does the interstitials for. Those all
Body
kind of,
bags.
yeah, those all kind of look like, he handpicked those because they're in the same
Yeah, and I
vibe.
think that there was a time where he just really loved filmmaking, and the creative process of all of it from beginning to end. He loved doing it, and it's unfortunate that he kind of got bashed in. His head got bashed in by the studio system, right?
It's an interesting comparison to Peele because I feel like Carpenter, he he had so many good films that weren't acknowledged as good films until later in his career,
Hmm.
whereas Peele, a similar filmmaker, got immediate praise until he did something that didn't really hit as hard as his previous films, like we'll talk even Twilight Zone.
Hmm.
And that, I would argue, tanked his career already.
I mean, we'll see. I think that Nope had a really good recession, or not recession. What's the word?
Reception.
Reception. Um, and it kind of it almost canceled out the horror reception for the Twilight Zone television show.
I hope so. I
Yeah,
really do.
I don't think that everybody loved it as much as Get Out and Us. But I mean, even Us had kind of mixed
Yeah,
and
and
middling reviews here and there.
I didn't like Us
I
that
am
much.
not a fan.
Yeah, I
Not a
didn't
fan
like
of
Us
Us.
that much after
I liked
Get Out
Us
is
quite a
so
bit
good.
actually.
I get
Well,
why it's fucking weird and different. It's a different movie.
yeah, I just like the nightmarish qualities of it that like logically again nothing makes sense in that movie, but the creepiness is what I
Well,
enjoyed about it.
okay, I'm glad you said that because yes, it is very creepy.
Mhm.
It is a very fun watch, but if you start analyzing the film, Us is filled with so many plot holes that the
Yeah.
entire narrative falls apart immediately. So what are we left with? A
Yeah,
nonsensical story that looks really good?
I think so, but I think it's also it's like meant to have this like dreamlike quality to it where you're like this none of this makes sense, but is it meant to? And like, do you want it to? I don't personally think that anything really needed to make sense. And it almost had a Mouth of Madness sort of feel to it where there's these things going on that are seemingly absolutely impossible logically, but they're still happening and you accept them within the context of the framework of the movie.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, I can definitely give you that one for sure.
yeah. I mean, again, I don't think it's perfect, but I like it. And I've watched it a couple of times because I think the performances are really good and I think the cinematography is excellent. And I also really like the art design in that movie.
It
Also,
is beautiful.
also
Yeah.
putting Tim Heidecker in a movie like that and letting him just do his thing is great because I think he's an underrated serious actor because his style of comedy is like so deadpan and so anti-comedy that he circles back around to being like a really good actor in a way. And he only has a couple serious roles, and in both of them he kind of plays this like loudmouth kind of there's a movie that he's in called Hipster. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it. It's called something like that, Hipster, where he just plays like a 45-year-old guy who's like rich and like basically lives at home still. And it's a similar character to in Us, where he's just like this dickhead, but it's played in this way that just you want to see him get murdered. You know what I mean?
Well,
so,
you get to see
by
that.
the fog.
Yeah, by the fog. So
well, if you want to see him get murdered, you get to see him get murdered twice in Us.
Yeah. So this movie feels like a John Carpenter immediately when they go into the dark church, the groundskeeper guy who looks like he's 45, but he's probably 23 because of the way people aged in the 70s and 80s. And
Yeah.
basically he's like, yo, I need you to pay me for this job. And the father is basically just like, he's having a sip of wine. You can tell that he has no money. And he's they never really explore the drinking thing. I thought he was going to be like more of a villain. But he ends up kind of being the hero. Sort of.
I think it's insane how much like drinking and driving there is in this movie, and even the priest is like an advocate. They're like, John Carpenter's about to leave, and he's like, "You want something for the road to keep you warm?" It's like you're just trying to give this guy wine.
Oh, that was John Carpenter, the groundskeeper.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a movie set on the West Coast with East Coast attitudes.
Yeah.
And I have to say, like, and you're right, Jason. Like, people that live along a coastline, they age the same way that cars rust, real fast.
Yeah,
because everybody's drinking all day long and smoking the entire time.
Yeah, well, the seawater just like
and the salty air,
rots.
Yeah.
like
from
stripping paint off of a boat.
Have you ever been to Yarmouth? You're born 55. Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. Yeah, we get a great. So there's a few like jump scares in this, and I'm gonna keep bringing up Stay Alive just because it's so fresh in my head, and there's some parallels between the two movies as far as horror movie making goes. But that movie, Stay Alive, just had dumb jump scares where it's just like basically going like this to you. And this movie has some expert jump scares. Obviously, the body.
It has earned jump scares, like there's nothing worse than just jump after jump after jump without it being in any way built up towards or earned in any way.
This one I find it to be very special because he walks into a room and a rock falls off the wall and the radio turns on and he drops his wine. So it's like three things happen all at the same time. And then while he's noticing that there's something in the wall, which turns out to be like the book that has the story of the diary of why this is all happening, the radio's playing. And that's another thing that I love about this movie. The weird like narration by Stevie throughout the whole movie. Mm-hmm. In the first half, obviously, she's in the background, just the smooth sounds of the lighthouse radio. Everybody's so horny for her, which I also thought was super funny. But that is so unique. I might consider that to be like the John Carpenter of it all for this movie. Maybe that's a new segment. But the fact you don't see that in movies where a character is the main character. She's like top billed for the movie. I'm pretty sure, right? Adrienne Barbeau.
Yeah.
Yes.
She's not. She's
like her debut, I believe.
Yeah, she's not in the movie like that much, really. But she is in every scene pretty much because the radio is always playing. The radio as a character is an interesting concept, which John Carpenter must have said to himself, "That's never been done before. Why don't I try that?" And it worked, I thought.
What else really worked? And you brought this up and didn't address it. You're talking about how successful the jump scares were. Normally, a jump scare is accompanied by a shrill spike in music. With the trifecta jump scare that you just talked about, all of the audio used in that was actually the sounds of what was happening on the screen.
Yeah, and then
that made it much more effective.
And then the payoff of it, the like moment after where you're reeling, is just like smooth jazz. It's like and it's like that. I don't know. It's sometimes people attempt things like that, and it just falls flat on its face.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, I'll bring up Stay Alive for that sort of thing. And a myriad, even some of the Grimoire movies that we've done have, like, even Friday the 13th and Freddy Krueger, they all have these, like, attempts at things sometimes that just don't work. Obviously, they have great moments. Jason throws a guy through a window, and it's pure chaos and one of the best things I've ever seen in a movie. But, sometimes it's just, Jason just picks you up by the head and throws you or stabs you. You know what I mean? Like, it's not effective.
Or punches the head clean off.
Yeah, that's coming, isn't it? Has that happened already? I think that's in Jason Takes
8.
Manhattan.
Yeah.
Okay. And then he plays basketball at the head, I think.
No. I mean, kind of, but no. He punches it off a roof and it falls in a garbage can.
Oh.
Adrienne Barbeau was married to John Carpenter for a bit, too, just in case anybody wanted to know.
Yeah, they were together during the making of this movie, which I find really weird. If this was before, I think this was after he and Deborah Hill were together and broke up.
Yeah, I think there was probably some stuff going on.
They were having weird...
There was definitely some drama.
No, they were having weird 70s sex parties and cocaine 80s parties.
70s sex parties in the Lighthouse radio station.
Yeah.
The Lighthouse is what the sex club was called.
That's what it was called in Halifax.
It's true, the Lighthouse. It was a strip club. I never got to go. I was too young, but my dad talks about it all the time. The father, I forget what his name is. I have it written down later. He
Patrick Malone.
Yeah, Father Malone.
Played by Hal Holbrook.
I was going to ask you guys, that guy looks familiar. Would I know him from anything?
I mean, he's been in so many films.
70s, 80s character actor kind of guy?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
He plays drunk priest in this movie.
In every movie, he was typecast as a drunk priest, which is something
I mean, he does a good job. At one point, I was like, "Is this guy actually drunk? Is that real wine?
Well,
that's
it's
not
true,
a prop
'cause
bottle."
When the groundskeeper's like, "Can I get paid?" He's like, "What?" Well, first he's like, "Come in for 6 tomorrow."
Yeah, maybe you just take a couple hours off tomorrow.
That's how they
stop asking me questions. Glub, 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 glub.
Blah blah blah. That's right. So that's right. We get the book. We get the I think the reveal that he mentions in the book that it happened in 1880, which is 100 years to the day, or to the whatever. They don't really say to the day, but it's implied. Also, people love 100 years. People love just 100 years later, the thing is happening again. That's definitely a trope.
It's enough time to have passed that likelihood of anybody being alive during both is zero.
Exactly.
And then what I noticed at this point that I kind of like wasn't focused in on, but all this stuff is happening while the credits are just appearing at the bottom. And I have a rich history of hating when they stop everything to do a bad credit, like bad opening credits, which is the style of this time, But John Carpenter once again is like, people will see the names at the bottom. That's good enough. Let's keep it moving. So I liked that because I didn't even think about it until I realized. And then all the payphones go crazy. That's a thing in this movie that I was kind of like, the foreshadowing coming from the car horns going off, the phones ringing, random glass shattering. That kind of built a tension that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, and it is quite good, but I have to say the physical effects of the presence of the fog are very fragmented when it comes to the storytelling, because that has really nothing to do with the story. The story is the ghosts and how they interact with the people. 6 must die. There is nothing to tell us that the physical manifestation of a ghost making a phone ring plays any importance whatsoever. We have windows shattering, which it's a fantastic effect, especially in the truck with Nick and Elizabeth, which honestly makes no sense.
Yeah, I'll talk about that when we get to that.
Yeah, but the phone's ringing, things are exploding. It's never really referenced. It's never addressed. It just happens. And then ghosts.
I think it might be an implication of poltergeists are already there, and the poltergeists are maybe the harbinger. I think I think the story needed a little bit more room to breathe for certain elements.
Yeah. The way I read it was like the thicker the fog, the more that these things are able to manifest themselves. So like if the fog isn't there yet, there might be a light mist, and that's
the thicker the fog, the bigger the hog.
All right.
Well, the movie itself is fantastic, but a third of it is that's fine. A third of it is all reshoots, right? Because Carpenter hated what the final project was, and he was embarrassed by it. So they did reshoots, and then a third of the movie is new stuff. So I'm wondering if that's some of this, like the telephone booth, the shattered window, something like that, to just kind of flesh out the power that this supernatural entity really has.
It's a bit of the disjointedness of Prince of Darkness, where it's
that's
just
a very good point.
Kind of weird, just like weird for the sake of weird. But since you know where you are and what you're watching, I forgive it, and I bet people at the time were a little bit less forgiving. Like, I don't know if there were real movie reviewers outside of like Siskel and Ebert, but like people watching the movie and then discussing it were probably like, "That why was that happening?" You know?
Yeah.
I always wonder what it was like writing about all these new crazy movies, like reimagining what cinema could be around the turn of the 70s and 80s, because that's where a lot of the way movies are made now, it's like the blockbuster comes from that era, right? So it's interesting to wonder what the pundits, if you will, said about the B movies, because obviously like this is probably like the kind of movie you took your sweetheart to at the drive-in. You know, that's the vibe I got. You know, you're not really paying attention. You're doing a little bit of the old smoocherooskies, and I could see John Carpenter being a nightmare on set a little bit, shooting a whole bit and then being like, no, throw that out. We got to redo it. They're like, what are you talking about? We just spent X amount of money on it. He's like, well, it looks like shit, and I'm John Carpenter. I'm not John Carpenter yet, but I will be very soon.
That's the thing, yeah.
So I always wonder about that. But you're right about the disjointedness of the fog and the rules. Stay Alive, we talked about the rules a lot. And the rules of this change very drastically from, feels like there's poltergeist, like Steve, you said, it's like the thickness of the fog. And then once the fog comes, it's like, do the ghosts travel as fog in the fog and then materialize, or is the fog just shrouding them, and there's so many of them that they're everywhere? There's that really tense scene where she's trying to get the car out of the mud, and then they keep looking at the window because obviously, and right before that they like run around the truck and they're looking around, and it's like, can't these ghosts just manifest themselves wherever they want to be? I do understand it's a movie, so you have to build tension. But, theater of the mind plays a large role in watching a movie like this. It's the whole point of why we get scared when we're watching a film. So your mind starts to wander. And then when it's been 40 years since this movie came out. More than that. So we've seen a lot of things that make more sense. But I think that's why we are able to have a discussion like this about it.
Yeah, it's also these types of movies are fun to speculate on though too as well, right? Like a movie like Stay Alive absolutely needs to have rules in order for you to understand what's going on, whereas a movie like this, the mystery about what the rules are is also part of the fun of watching it, right? I think that's kind of where Stay Alive fell apart for me, whereas something like this doesn't, is because the rules are established and then they start breaking the rules every 5 seconds, where you're like, okay. Whereas this movie, you're sort of discovering the rules as you go along.
Yeah. But it's also a film where not a lot happens and you're captivated the entire time. Whereas Stay Alive, there's so much going on that they have to end up contradicting themselves just to carry the story over. And you're like, by the end, you're like, I don't care. Yeah. Here, you're like, I'm unnerved. Like, this is impressive. Like, this is a great film.
Yeah, the man. It immediately goes to the kid, the store clerk closing down. I thought it was really funny that he just grabs an orange juice off the shelf and takes a sip and then puts it back. Like, just glass bottles of orange juice with no seal.
Mm-hmm. Different time.
And the bottles are clacking around, and we get a shot of. This is when I started thinking about Jaws, because they do show like a shark's jaw that's hanging, and it kind of falls down, and the horns are honking, I think, at this point, and the gas price is going up, and then like a car on a mechanic lift just goes up on its own. These are just sort of the spooky things that are happening at this time. So this is when we get introduced to Tom Atkins, and he's once again here to steal yo girl. I don't know who keeps putting him in movies where he fucks a lot, but this
apparently he was a very desirable man in this era, because this is like one of, I think, 3 or 4 Carpenter
Halloween
either
3.
Carpenter or Carpenter adjacent projects. Yeah,
he's a ladies' man and an adulterer.
Yeah. And then in Escape from New York, he's like the quest giver, I
Yeah.
guess.
Tom Atkins in this movie, Nick Castle, also the name of the actor who played Michael Myers in Halloween. They do that a lot with this movie, using those names.
I have a theory corner, so we'll get to that.
It just picks up Jamie Lee Curtis, Elizabeth, the hitchhiker. Next scene we see them in, they're already in bed.
They'd be bangs there because he's quirky. Listen, Tom Atkins looks like a shaved Yeti.
He doesn't look like a shaved Yeti. Well, maybe.
Jason, you're so rude.
No, I thought that would be funny to say, because I think that Marjorie Taylor Greene looks like a shaved ape. I think Tom Atkins looks like a shaved
But,
Yeti.
the difference between those two people is one of them's a horrible person who I don't mind you calling a shaved ape, and the other person I don't think has been canceled in any capacity.
No, I'm sorry, Tom Atkins / Tom Watkins, who I've written down that name all through my notes.
It really is seeing him without a mustache, though. It's really weird.
I think that's what it is. I can see he's got that 70s guy vibe anyway. Like he is rough looking, but he does have a very like prominent jaw. He's not a bad looking guy, really. He's just unique looking, I think.
He's got a great attitude, a solid jawline, and a good voice.
He's perfect.
He's perfect for 1980s horror films.
He's kind of a Willem Dafoe, I guess. Facially.
Facially. What? So you're saying he's ugly, is what you're saying?
No, like
he's distinct.
He's probably got a wrench.
No, I don't think Willem Dafoe is ugly either. I think that he's just interesting looking.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. I'm sorry, Tom Atkins. I know you're a big fan of the show. I don't think you look like a shaved Yeti. I just wanted to say that because it's very funny to me. Anyway, Mr. Fuck You Girl comes and bangs Jamie Lee Curtis. And that's where we're gonna get to a little bit of an early. Where the fuck is it?
Theory.
I have a theory about. It's a larger theory, kind of like the Ghosts of Mars thing. I can see a lot of parallels and a lot of reason to believe that this is actually Halloween 3. Oh, would you like me to elaborate? First of all, Jamie Lee Curtis' character says that she's been kind of on the run for a while. She's hitchhiked 13 times or whatever. After, what's the character's name from Halloween? What's her name?
Laurie Strode?
Yeah, after Laurie, she leaves. She's not in Halloween 4, and she's just been gone, right?
Not 3 either.
Yeah, but 3 is a different. Put this movie instead of 3. It also works for the like anthology thing. Now,
also technically she is in 3.
Oh, calm down. Just because a clip on TV.
And she's also the voice of like the announcements at the Shamrock thing.
This is just for fun. I'm just doing this for fun because I like it. She sort of brings on Michael Myers to be the killer that he is. And then in this, she shows up in this town. She tells Tom Atkins that, bad luck sort of follows her around. And then immediately bad things start happening. I know that it's based off this like old like pirate's tale, this old sea captain tale about the gold and stuff, which we'll talk about. But then the guy who comes out of the ocean, like the leader of the like sea people, he moves very slow. He's very tall. He's very brooding. You never really see his face.
It's played by Jason Momoa.
And it's and that is C. Michael Myers. Ocean Michael Myers.
Okay.
Okay.
This is your theory?
This is my listen. I haven't done a bong thoughts from my dream journal in a while. Okay, style of theory.
It's also the special effects guy, yeah.
Oh, is it?
Rob Bottin did
Cool.
all the effects for like The Thing and everything like that. Yeah, he plays Blake, the main pirate guy,
I wish we would
main
have
pirate
seen.
leper.
I wish we would have seen more of his face. We only really get a good look at it for like a 2 seconds at the end.
I feel like you feel that way, but then if they showed it too much, you'd be like, oh, they showed too much of that face. That's kind of how I felt in Prince of Darkness, where they keep showing that oozy face lady, and I'm like, all right, we get it. She's full of pus. I don't need to see any more goop lady.
So, well, that's nonsense. I feel like it might have been a Ghosts of Mars situation where John Carpenter had all these ideas swirling, and then he's like, I can't just make Ocean Michael Myers. I got to make a new thing. But there's a lot
This feels like it could have been one of those when they started to try and make Halloween into anthology movies. This could have been one of the Halloween movies. It could have been
why I even brought it up, because I
Halloween
was like,
4, The Fog.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I brought it up, because if it did turn anthology, this would have just call this, like you said, Halloween 4, and it would have been fine. And people would have been speculating for the last 40 years that this is also Michael Myers, or this would have been around the same time as like Halloween 2, right?
This
What year? I
movie
thought Halloween
came
1
out.
is 79.
Yeah, about the same.
Yeah.
This is 1980.
Yeah.
Yeah, came out quite close to the first Halloween.
Should be the
Just a
same.
couple of years.
Anyway,
So the first Halloween is 78.
78, yeah. All I did with that was it was meant to be thought provoking. I just thought it was interesting that when they find the leader of the like pirates from the ocean was very Michael Myersy. It's got even got the like Ben, when you said that the score is basically Halloween, it's a little bit more than that. I think it goes dang it, like that much of the Halloween theme makes it
the Halloween Season of the Witch, the music in that is not the classic Halloween music either, and it feels very much. I think he was just really kind of working in a specific vein for his horror themes.
Okay, well, thanks for shooting me right down.
Well, Halloween 6, The Thing, right?
Halloween 7 in Little China.
It's just Michael Myers, except it's from space, and it's an alien.
Yep. Michael Myers versus Freddy versus Jason.
Versus Ash.
Versus Predator versus Terminator versus the Ninja Turtles.
Versus
RoboCop.
Yeah.
Right. So I kind of mentioned what she says in my little theory corner there, where she's hitchhiked a bunch, and then the windows explode, and then that's when I came up with my theme. And then this theme of this trope through this movie of these things happening, and they cut to a scene and they just move on, happens a couple times. I was shocked that the next time we see Steve and Elizabeth, to the point that I had to rewind and be like, they're not going to talk about that. They mention it later, but like that happens, and then we just go to Stevie, and she's the local radio woman, and her voice is great.
She's great. She's a good character. She's also got investment in outside of herself, which not all the other characters do.
Yeah.
Just
also
her child.
Iconic in the fact that the character was basically rehashed in Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated, which plays a character that plays through like both seasons as the radio DJ that her voice ties the plot together in every episode. I think that's really cool. A really deep dig for people that haven't seen The Fog. So like the people who made that show really knew their horror and did a great job, because that is such an interesting idea that a voice is what links stories together as opposed to their physical presence.
It's a shame though John Carpenter didn't get to know Pam Grier until later on in his career, because it would have been great if she was the radio host.
Yeah, she would have been excellent for that. And that's a good point, because Sandy and like the mayor or the counselor woman are kind of like lame characters that ended up just being used as part of the six.
Yeah, Sandy and Kathy.
Yeah, Kathy. She's the mayor, or is she? They said counselor at one point, but I didn't
Yeah.
end up catching what she was. She's in town for the weird ceremony.
Yeah, played by Janet Leigh, who's Jamie Lee Curtis's mother.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
That and was like in Psycho, killed in the shower in Psycho.
That's killed in the shower in Psycho?
Yeah.
Man.
Film history.
Carpenter knew what he was doing when he was well, he didn't cast the movie, but he knew who he wanted.
Listen, I'm learning a lot over the last couple of years. If even though we get a few people watching here and there, but my brain is filling with information. I wouldn't have known that the woman in Psycho who famously, iconically gets murdered in the shower was Jamie Lee Curtis's mom till recently. And then the fact that this film puts them together in the same film and they barely interact.
Yeah.
That's good
Just
shit.
like in Halloween H2O, same thing.
Oh, they get back she's in that as well?
Yep.
This movie could have been called Halloween H2O.
Sure.
Because fog is water.
Made up of water droplets.
That's fog, brother.
I don't know if you know
God.
this, but fog is water.
Water is fog. Nope. So the boys are on the ship, drinking, perving on Stevie. Fog bank rolling in.
Hated everything here.
It's funny that they're like fog bank out there, and then he looks out and he's like, "Hey, there's a fog bank out there." I thought that was a funny little, like, one of those subtle jokes, just a fun little. These guys are idiots. The fog comes in and fucks up the generator, and then a ghost ship rolls through that they never really show all of. I think they might show one like still image kind of moving on like maybe like a matte painting, but the shot of them looking up at it from the trawler, I think that's what they're called, was really well done.
Yeah, no, it was a great shot, especially looking up at the clipper ship. It definitely established the fact that this is an old timey thing. In one quick shot where you could use bits and pieces of a set and not have to show an entire ship. Definitely a great money saving idea that came across perfectly on camera.
And it doesn't feel like they're on a set either. Like it just
doesn't feel like they're on a set. It works.
Yeah, it looked really good. I couldn't believe that's another one of those moments where he just makes so much out of so little. Like how much? Do you guys happen to know what the budget for this movie was off the top of your head?
$1.1 million.
See, that's.
It made 23, I think.
Yeah, like adjusted for inflation, that's.
Yeah.
It's not even a lot for movie making standards.
Yeah.
Do either of you know how this movie was received in 1980? Obviously,
well.
But it made 20 times its money, so it was a critical or a box office hit.
Yeah, I mean, most of his movies are not critically well received until years later. He's like we've talked about this before, where he's one of those. He's a genre filmmaker, which genre movies often aren't really critically well received until the people who saw them as teenagers grow up and become film reviewers, and then they'll go back and say, this movie is amazing. And in our outro at the end, we'll, I'm sure, talk about the fact that his style and his sensibilities as a filmmaker have been emulated so many times that we love him, and like the thing is that people hated him, and like I can't even really think of a director who was panned as much as he was critically, whose career lasted as long as was so rife with like good stuff. I mean, like I'm struggling to think of someone. He's hard to compare to. I mean, like Paul W.S. Anderson, I guess.
Oh,
but like,
don't you dare!
But I mean, like, what I mean to say is that they are very like maximalist and heightened genre filmmaking. I'm not saying that he's as good as John Carpenter. I would never. Those words would never come out of my mouth. But I mean, something like Event Horizon feels a lot like a John Carpenter movie.
Yeah, accurate.
but I guess he got really obsessed with making video game movies for some reason, and never stopped. But yeah, it's hard to find someone to compare him to. But his movies typically would do well financially, and that's why the studios kept giving him another crack at it, right? Like, all right, remember that time that you made Halloween and essentially like funded our studio for the rest of time?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
basically. Steve, look at your phone. So right, so it comes in, fucks them all up. The ghouls are creeping, face stabbing, which I thought was a great scene. This is what I was talking about earlier, where you actually get to see like the stabbing, where in horror movies they just cut away a lot of the time, and it's not gory or bloody. It's just effective. It's an effective moment.
Yeah.
And then they talk about how so Stevie has that friend Dan on the phone who's a weatherman, and they kind of allude to the fog moving in two separate directions, which is like trippy on its own.
Yeah. That's part of like that's where the horror comes in, right? It's like, okay, now they understand that this fog has a mind of its own.
Exactly.
Right. And then
No, it's very unnerving.
it's super unnerving to think about fog having a mind of its own. It's almost like the Blob or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have we have I don't know if it was revealed up to this point that Stevie's actually in the lighthouse. But it does. We do see that she's looking out. She's like, I see it going due east, and he's like, it's going due west. And then we cut back to Elizabeth and Nick, who have just gotten it on. Apparently, they're now living together.
Yeah, they're married now. They got married.
They have 10
And
kids.
he is annoyed with her all of the time after this.
Yeah.
Like, she's just following him around wherever he goes. He's like, yeah, I'm doing this. I'm doing this. I'm doing this.
It kind of got to the point that in my notes I stopped writing and Elizabeth, because it's a strange thing to have happen to somebody like Jamie Lee Curtis, where she's just kind of there,
Ever present,
yeah.
not doing a thing.
And we get an ominous knock on the door. There's a shadowy figure and some fog, and Tom Atkins is Nick's about to get chopped in the face. And I guess the glass of the clock breaking. This was a really confusing thing for me, because that like scared away the ghoul, I guess.
Mm. I'm confused by that scene myself. I honestly don't know.
So
Yeah, I mean, this is another one of those moments where you're just kind of like you're trying to piece together what the rules are, right? And I'm okay with it. I wasn't thinking too hard about it, but at the same time, I'm like, I do want a little bit more clarity here on how these ghosts work. And are we gonna get like some salt ring or something where the fog can't go through the salt?
Well, it just seems to be the witching hour, right? Like
Right.
they can only really do something during that one period of time. But for how long and how many days in a row? Yeah, it's coming up on 100 years, but if they can do it on the days leading up, can they do it the days afterwards? Can they do
Yeah,
it
and
how
like,
many days leading up? Like what are these rules?
what if
and
they
is it
just
like their strength is being heightened up until the 100th day when they are able
Yeah,
to sort of fully become zombies and stuff?
exactly.
Psycho's theory is that the clock broke at the strike of 1, so the witching hour ended.
Yeah.
So it's
And
just
that's
the 1
why it
hour.
went away.
So it's like, what if everybody just leaves this town? Like if they don't figure out the gold thing at the end and they all just leave. That's kind of like the Michael Myers Halloween thing. Like, just
Yeah.
leave the town.
Well, the gold thing at the end didn't do anything anyway.
True. It's all very confusing. So like the kid that I guess turns out to be Stevie's son.
Yeah.
He's going fishing. He finds a gold coin that just mysteriously turns into a piece of wood with the word Dane on it. Also, he comes in and he goes, "Can I have a Coke and a stomach pounder?" What the fuck is a stomach pounder?
Oh, I thought he said stomach soother.
Oh,
I missed this altogether, but it sounds like the best hamburger ever.
yeah, or like
Yeah.
or a hoagie.
I thought maybe he was like wanted like one of those like things that you put in water that makes it fizzy.
Like Alka-Seltzer.
Alka
Alka-Seltzer?
Seltzer, yeah. A tummy soother. But a tummy pounder, yeah, that sounds like a
Double
triple,
down.
yeah, a bunch of bacon and cheese on it.
I want one. I'm gonna make myself a low calorie stomach pounder. It sounds like something else, but we won't get into that. Nick goes and asks the dockmasters about the ship boys, and he says they got drunk. So they're just out there still being drunk. He's gonna go take a look for them. Then it just cuts to a nervous older blonde lady and Sandy. That's I still forget her name. What's the mayor's name? Susan?
You know me, I don't remember anyone's names.
Kathy?
Kathy, thank you.
Yeah.
And they're looking at like a monument to the ship, I guess, that sank. This was also kind of unclear to me, the whole ceremony and everything.
Well, just celebrating 100 years of Antonio Bay,
Okay.
under false pretenses, as we find out.
So you said this movie's set on the West Coast. Where was this shot?
Oh God.
Is it somewhere around San
I want to
Francisco?
say, it was NorCal, yeah. Oh God. Let me see what I can find here. A lot of the studio stuff was done in Hollywood. Point Reyes, Bolinas, Inverness, and Sierra Madre. Okay.
So in and around like, yeah, Northern California.
San Jose.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool, because I've never seen. This is the shot with the scenic rolling grass hill and she's driving.
Yeah.
I've
The
never
lighthouse is in California, yeah.
I've never seen that before. That shot. I'm surprised more movies don't use specifically that shot. It's probably like a horrible polluted wasteland 40 years later.
Almost definitely.
Or like city. But it'd be interesting to see what that looks like now. Stevie finds out that the seagrass trawler hasn't returned, and Nick and Elizabeth go find the seagrass. This is where I was like, this is very Jaws-y. And this is like one of those movies where there's like a whole part where just things are happening between the three groups. Mm-hmm. So Sandy and Kathy go to the church, and I kind of noticed that first part with the father and the guy, and then the jump scare that we talked about, was kind of like a Ghostbusters opening. You know how all
Definitely.
the Ghostbusters movies have like the part with the thing and then it goes into the theme? That's kind of a vibe that I got. So they go back there, and that's when we get that weird shot of the father. You think you're going to go in and see this father maimed or something, but he comes out of the shadows in a really unique way.
Not just the shadows, the complete dark.
The complete dark, yep.
It's terrifying.
Which was another really effective jump scare, you know?
Yeah.
I think there was one jump scare in this movie that actually made me jump, where it hit me, and I even knew it was coming. So you're like, this is happening, but it's the part just after he phones the radio station, and it's like the guy, kind of the shitty, horny guy, and he goes to check out the sound, and the fog is just all around him, and the lights are like slowly turning red on his face.
Yeah.
And he gets hooked. He gets neck hooked, and it's so long. That scene is so long that you're kind of waiting and you're waiting, and you know it's going to happen, but you're not quite sure when it's going to happen. And just when your guard is down enough, you get that sting, and it got me good.
That's what I was.
One of my favorite parts, for sure.
Yeah.
When he's like, "Yeah, right. These kids are coming to prank me."
Yeah.
And the fog is just
the
like
old prank boys,
coming up
Prankerton and his brothers, Pranky and Pranklin.
And Pranklin. Right. So Father Malone reveals that he's been reading the book. He only reads up to a certain point. It'd be, maybe finish the thing.
Yeah. If you're that freaked out.
Yeah. It's like I was too scared, so I didn't read anymore. It's like if you would have read like 3 more pages, you would know how to end all this.
Yeah, God's on your side, man.
Yeah. Eliza and Nick's still looking for the boat. we get so there. Eliza and Nick are like on the trawler now, looking around, investigating, sort of, and Nick's basically like, it looks like this boat was like flipped over because everything has like seaweed and everything's like cold and wet, and he takes a beer can and pours a little bit out and tastes it. It's like, it's salt water. And I was like, okay, you could probably smell that it was salt water.
Yeah.
Thanks for the visual though. Anything for another sip, I guess. Everybody's a raging alcoholic in this town.
That's true.
Tiny coastal town. That makes sense.
It's true. I'm, once again,
I do like how much they play that up, though. How, like, obviously, like, nothing really has happened to the boat. Like, it did not capsize, it did not roll, nothing like that. But every vital instrument is waterlogged.
Yeah.
I find that very interesting. I think that was a really cool story point.
Yeah, and then we'll get to it. It's like we're motoring through at this point. But the corpse is also like it's been dead and bloated at the bottom of the ocean for months, but it's been hours. We get a bogus jump scare from a radio as sort of a misdirect or a foreshadowing to the real jump scare that's coming. But the radio really is kind of like an entity in this movie that ties everything together. And the book talks about, so this is a part that it was kind of confusing to me about the story. So is it that they wanted to build the church and people didn't want it to be built because of some sort of gold being buried there, and they wanted the gold so they killed the people, or vice versa? I don't know how I missed an element of the story, but can somebody enlighten me on what the book is basically saying?
Yeah. Well, Blake was a very rich man, and he and the people on his boat were all suffering from leprosy. So he wanted to offer money to the community to set up a leper colony.
Right. Okay.
And instead, they intentionally sank the ship, killing everyone on board, and used the money to, like, the gold on board to fund the town. To settle the town.
Okay.
Yeah.
They pirated them.
Cool, because the book talks about, like, when in the reveal that, like, I didn't want to do this, but, like, what am I going to do? Go against the people who are the killers? So this whole shit's haunted. And then Nick tells a story right after that.
Oh, Nick.
They're talking about that. Elizabeth's like, I'm bad luck. And he's like, I don't believe in shit. I was like, okay. I don't believe in anything. Actually, it makes sense now what you said, that he's just now annoyed by her.
Oh, yeah, totally.
I didn't even pick up on that. I was just like, she's useless in this plot now. She's like, she's obviously going to be final girl is what I thought was going to happen.
Yeah.
But she's kind of one of the final six. Nobody of note really dies. It's all people like around them are kind of dropping. But he tells a story about his dad who worked on a brig, and they had an encounter with the ship, and they got on the ship, and there was like food still warm and a cup that was like rusted to the table, and he picked up a doubloon. A dabbaloon. And he brought the doubloon back home and to give to his kid, and then when he went to get it, it was gone. And that was actually 1960.
Oh my goodness,
or something. It was something about the date on that as well. Anyway, an eyeless dead guy falls out and scares everybody. And that was actually good. That got me. I didn't expect
that was a good jump scare for sure.
Because I thought the jump scare for that scene was the radio, but that was a good bait and switch to do. And things keep happening. Oh yeah, this is when I recognize this is another one of those, like, the body falls on them and then just goes to the next thing.
Yeah, they cut immediately.
things just keep happening, and they're like, yeah, well, let's not dwell on that too much. Let's just move right along. They don't. John Carpenter must have wanted to do let things breathe a bit more, because if you watch, there's a scene in Escape from New York when Snake Plissken first gets there, and he's just sneaking around for like 10 minutes. He's
It's
just
great.
looking around for 10 minutes. He's doing a Metal Gear Solid sneak around. And this is the next thing is that you brought this up earlier, where it smash cuts to Stevie going to her lighthouse.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the part where the radio switches over to like demonic voice. The piece of wood that her son gave her erupts into water, smoke, and like a weird flame. I wouldn't really call it a flame, more like a firework, which I thought was
saying 6 must die.
Yeah. So I think 6 people have to die for this curse to go away.
And one thing that they do cover in the book that wasn't mentioned in the movie is that you had mentioned that the people that died just kind of seem random. In the book, you find out that they're all descendants of the people that sank the ship.
Oh, that makes sense.
Okay.
Like a Freddy Krueger style.
Exactly. So you're like, these
It's revenge.
peripheral characters that we don't even really know, that we're not introduced to, that just really get killed, that amount to the 6, are actual like bloodline relatives of the people that sank Blake's boat. So I don't know why they wouldn't include that in the film, or if they did, I completely missed that.
I don't think they did. I think I would have picked up on that, and I think it might have been a runtime thing. It would have had to have been, because telling a story like that throughout the movie probably would have added another 10 minutes or more, 10, 15 minutes to like really hit home why. Because you'd have to have like some sort of a flashback. This movie, John Carpenter has this thing where people tell stories instead of an exposition dump. You get sort of exposition through like, this thing happened, like Loomis does it all through Halloween movies. So I'm not even at the point where the druids mean anything yet. I'm on the 4th or 5th one. Space Cadet Tim just got home. Am I in time for the home loan of it all? No, we're getting to it. It's coming up. She immediately, after she witnesses that, she immediately calls her kid and is like, where the fuck did you get that wood from? He's like, I don't know, I just found it. It was a coin and then it was wood. It's like,
It happens.
If you're going to go to the water ever again, please bring me with you and do not pick up anything unless I say it is okay. And then the kid's like, I see the fog rolling in.
Oh, fuck.
So we get this scene with the coroner. We're there at the hospital. He says the guy looks like he's been underwater for a month, but he's only been dead a few hours. And then it suddenly gets cold in the hospital, and the body, I realize now what happened. I didn't know at the time, but the body like gets up and goes towards old Scream Queen Elizabeth. She screams and the body drops, and it carves something. I thought it was trying to carve like 13, but I'm realizing now it's trying to carve 6.
Yep.
I just put that together.
I don't think we need this scene in the movie.
I think it was just for spookiness.
Yeah.
Spooky. But why did
it almost cheapens the rest of the film, I find.
Yeah. Like, what was...
It's just throwaway horror fare at this point.
What was it controlled by? What was it there to do other than just make you feel a certain way?
Right.
You do need a morgue scene if you're going to have a guy with his eyes cut out, but like make it gross or something. Like, don't just like...
Or make fog come out of his eyes.
Yeah.
But like, we also don't see anything else like this in the movie, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like tonally mismatched from everything else, right? Like
exactly.
It does feel like what they're trying to do is to calm things down for a second, to be like, all right, everybody, let's just chill for a minute, and maybe we'll give you some kind of explanation. But then you don't really get any kind of explanation from it, really.
Yeah, it's a new rule, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's very much a classic "what are we doing here" scene.
Yeah, but I mean, after coming off of Stay Alive, where they have far too many "what are we doing here" scenes. It is. I'm glad that they kept it at least short,
Yeah.
even though it does feel out of place.
Yeah.
Stay Alive, almost the like at least 15 minutes of the runtime total is people standing around speculating on shit. You're like, okay, shut up,
Yeah.
move along.
And they try this a little bit because right here we have Nick and Stevie talking as the fog rolls in. And I speculated it was going to be a bloodbath for the last half hour. And that kind of like, it kind of leads into the Home Alone of it all, but I'm not quite. You know what, actually? I was going to bring it up last week and I just didn't. And then we didn't do the segment at all. So I'm going to do the Home Alone of it all. We can just do it quickly. But this is the Home Alone of it all.
If you had to pick one, what do you think the Home Alone of it all?
the Home Alone of it all?
Can someone please tell me when the Home Alone?
I really gotta know.
When is the Home Alone of it all?
What is the Home Alone of it all?
Now that's the Home Alone of it all.
The Home Alone of it all is, of course, the theory that I have that most movies have sort of a moment where it kicks off. In Home Alone, when Kevin McAllister runs home and slaps the blueprint down on the table with all the traps on it, that's sort of what you are there to see. You're sort of there to see the burglars get owned by Kevin. Some movies have it. Some movies start sooner than others. Steve has speculated that it could just be the trailer moments sort of put together. I've figured out that in a lot of movies it's just the third act, but in this, I think once he gets up and walks towards her and falls down, that's sort of when it kicks into that next gear. The fog rolls in, and then we get like that last half hour of just like horror. So do you guys have any anything to add to that? Like, did you have another moment that you would think would articulate the Home Alone of it all?
For me, it was that scene that I talked about earlier, where the guy calls the radio station, and you literally see the fog rolling over the water. It kind of felt like the Home Alone of it all to me. It was just like, okay, everything has been boiling up to this point, and now we're gonna get the titular fog. The fog of it all.
Yeah, I think it might be a little bit earlier than that for me, where Nick and Elizabeth are in bed and he's flipping through her book of art or paintings.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then they start getting that like repetitive knock at the door. You can see the fog. You can see a very clean outline, like a silhouette of a person, way too clean, who does not look like a waterlogged pirate or anything.
Looks like Michael Myers.
Yeah, well, it really does. But then, like, it's when the clock hits 1, I think, at that point, where like he then opens the door and everything is gone, including the fog. I'm like, okay, so there's certain rules we're playing by here. If he opened that door a few seconds earlier, he would have been like hooked in the neck or something. I find that the morgue scene is where we started getting a little too crazy with it. I feel like if we remove that scene from the movie, it plays out much smoother as a haunting narrative.
Yeah. Okay. It's almost like if you're not gonna expound on all of the narrative background of why they're killing who they're killing, make the movie like 86 minutes. cut little bits.
Why not?
But it already feels like they cut necessary stuff by just like the windows of a car exploding and then them just like the next scene they're in bed together. Like there's what happened? Anyway, back to the plot. Stevie notices the fog rolling in. She basically puts it in APB because she has the power of the radio, so she can talk to everybody in town simultaneously because that's the only radio station they listen to. And Liz and Nick, Nick really, he slams on the brakes, almost flips that old school truck. This is the scene that you were talking about. The fog rolls into Dan's house. He's talking to Stevie on the phone. He's like, he's constantly hitting on Stevie, and she's like not really entertaining it. I actually wrote early in my notes that I was like, I kind of dig these guys' vibe, the Cat and Mouse that they're playing. But he as the movie goes on, you're like, oh, he's like a kind of a sleazy weirdo. He's in his
Yeah, they did the character wrong. They could have written him a little bit differently, and it would have been a really fun addition to the plot.
yeah. Like you kind of kind of get the sense that that's who she's meant to end up with, instead
Exactly.
of
Yeah.
it being like he's constantly making advances, usually over the phone, because they both have jobs where they work in like remote buildings and they're not really dealing with other humans, but they
Yeah.
call each other because they have to talk to each other, because she's in a lighthouse and he's the weatherman. She can see the whole ocean. It's a good. You're right. It should have been written a little bit differently. I like that. And old Danny Boy thinks it's a joke that the fog is there. They're like, what are these kids doing out here? What's going on? He gets stabbed in the neck for his trouble, as Steve said earlier. And Stevie hears the whole thing, and she's like freaking out.
Rightfully so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then we get to learn about what other things the fog can do. It can take down a generator. It can cut power lines. It can take down the fucking power for a whole town. Luckily, did this happen already? Where the fog takes her tower out and then she just has a generator, and that was when she puts out the APB. She hits the generator.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, okay. The fog attacks the kid and the babysitter. So the kid's been with the babysitter this whole time, which was like some throwaway nonsense. Just to remember this kid? That's how that felt.
Now that's the Home Alone of it all.
Literally Kevin McAllister's in this movie. And so obviously the old lady opens the door to see what the smoke is all about. And she gets pulled into the smoke, and you just see the like guys stabbing, which I thought was kind of funny. It's like, are they going to kill an old lady on camera? But they do.
Oh, they had to.
But they do it in a way that is like almost funny, I thought.
It's hilarious. It does not fit by any means.
No. The Fog Boys get to the kid, but then Nick hears the call, and he makes it there in time to save the kid. Smashes out the window. He's like, get through. And this was another thing where he just smashes the window and says, come on. And then it cuts. It doesn't even like show the kid go through the window, I don't think. He just says, come on. And then it's like, oh.
We get on to the next scene.
Yeah, we get some.
The editing is really weird in this movie.
Yes. The sound design in this segment, though, this part, there's like a horn crescendo, and the truck gets stuck, and we already kind of went through this scene early in the episode, so we don't have to dwell on it, but you do get the real almost Friday the 13th style. You know something's coming, but you don't know how long you have.
I missed the music in this scene. I don't remember it. Was it actually that prominent?
Yeah.
Like, did it really?
Yeah.
I definitely have to go back and rewatch that part.
There was a big like almost like they did the climax with the music, and them trying to get away is kind of the climax of the movie.
Yeah.
Right, and I just made a note about how it was cool that it flipped. Stevie flipped from just being the calm voice in the background, just saying the news and the weather, and here's the next song from J.J. Abrams. The smooth sounds of Jazzy McJones. None of that's anything. Anyway, it goes from her you can hear her freaking out, like, everybody get to somewhere safe, get out of the fog.
Get down.
Get down. And this is what I was talking about earlier, where we get those like long road shots where people are like driving down and the fog comes. I'm surprised they never lampooned this on The Simpsons, because this feels like a really like easy to make jokes about the fog going this way and people running, and then
Guess I forgot to put the fog lights in.
But what the fog kind of does is it corrals the six back it kind of leads them all back to the church from different parts of town. And we have Nick, Elizabeth, the mayor, Sandy, Father Malone, and Boy. A stomach pounder.
Andy.
And
and Boy.
But the fog and Boy. And the fog also gets to Stevie as well. And basically, this is like he reads one more page and it's like, oh, we're just going to give the gold back. Cool.
I love it. They made a giant cross out of the leftover gold.
Yeah. I do like that set piece. I also like the set piece of them pushing furniture over the window like a video game. And then the hand, like the animatronic hands coming through. was really cool.
Looked great. Looked fantastic.
That could have looked so shitty, but ends up. I'm so like. I'm so like over CGI that when I see some good practical, that it like makes it even better.
Oh, definitely.
So
Yeah. After last week, especially.
yeah, yes. Sandra almost gets killed. Father Malone grabs the cross, and Andy's like, "Don't go in there; it's dangerous." And it feels like he's trying to just get away with the cross. Is what where my brain went, because I really wanted this father character to be a piece of shit, even though he's just kind of like a regular guy, drunk,
Mm-hmm.
drunk,
Definitely.
trying to save the day, has God on his side. But the zombies. Oh yeah. I have this issue with zombies in general, even though it's one of my favorite horror genres. These zombies are so slow that it's like just walk away from them. So that's why I was wondering. That's when I started to really think about like what are the rules, because it's like they're if you do they manifest in the smoke and can appear, or is the smoke shrouding them so you can't see them? But if they're just slow moving zombie people, just move out of the way. You know what I mean? Did you guys like think about that
I,
at all?
I fully believe they manifest in the fog.
Like they can just move fast through the fog and then
Yeah.
they appear and then they're
The same
right
way
on you.
Jason can teleport.
Yeah. Okay.
It's the only way that makes sense to me.
They kind of look they look like Michael Myers in stature, but like visually they kind of all have that Jason has fought for his life 20 times and it's just all mangled.
Exactly.
Yeah. So basically, this is the end of the movie. Father Malone goes into the main church area and tries to give the gold back. And simultaneously, they're chasing Stevie up to the roof of the fucking lighthouse. Cutting back and forth. Stevie's like fighting them off with a hook. She takes a hook to the arm. Boom. But she's kind of just like swiping at them. She's most certainly going to die. And then Nick pulls the father off the cross in the other scene, and the gold goes back, and everything stops, basically. Right? Is that safe to say? It's pretty much.
Yes.
It's all good. And then.
Yeah.
And then. I guess that's it. But then. We get a sequel. We get like a sequel teaser, because they just appear again, and start reaping havoc. So. I don't know. They kill the father, and then credits.
It's because he was the last descendant
Right.
needed for the six.
Right.
Even though he thought giving the gold back would fix everything. Not the case.
Yeah. So this is unfortunately there's not a whole lot to like dwell on. So it's not going to be one of our 3-hour long extravaganzas. I think even if we could take that kind of time with it, it would just be there's not a lot to this movie, you know?
I think that's why it works so well.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like it's streamlined. It says what it has to say in the time it needs to say it, and it's done well enough that when that 90 minutes is up and the credits are over, you feel like you just enjoyed a really good film.
Absolutely. So we will go into our final thoughts in a second here. But, Ben, we have a little game we like to play at the end of every episode.
Okay.
Would you like to play? Would you like to play?
Do I have a choice?
No.
Do I have to?
No. Ladies and gentlemen.
The MPAA, everyone.
Wrong.
The MPAA. Wow.
Wow.
It's time to play Guess the MPAA.
Welcome back to the number one game show on Hey, Did You See This One? It is, of course, the MPAA rating game. The MPAA certificate number is, of course, the number that shows up at the end of credits. It is the certificate number to display that the movie has been rated by the MPAA. Now, it is a 5-digit number, Ben and Steve. I don't tell Steve in advance. He doesn't look it up in advance. And Ben, of course, you are being blindsided by this. So all you have to do is I'm going to give you 2 numbers, and then you have to guess the next 3 digits in the 5-digit number. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
You will have 2 guesses. You will go back and forth, and I will tell if you're higher or lower. Ben, the first 2 digits are 25. What are the next 3 digits?
146.
Higher.
666.
Ben, higher.
748.
Steve, higher.
927.
What?
Oh.
That's incorrect. Thank you for playing the MPAA rating game. The MPAA for this movie is 25792.
That was close.
The MPAA, everyone. The MPAA. Wow.
Wow.
Ben, thank you for playing that. Steve got pretty close last week, but that is a pretty close guess. Thank you for playing. Now we're going to go into our final thoughts. Ladies and beans and genies. What? I have to put these with numbers because what is it? Final thoughts. There it is.
It's time for our final thoughts.
It is a tradition on Hey Did You See This One for the guest to go first. So Ben, why don't you hit us with your in summation? And if you have a rating for this movie, you can have it out of a number or you can have just an abstract rating. But why don't you give it to us?
Obviously John Carpenter's my favorite director. It's fantastic to see him do a ghost film. His only one. Like we had talked about before, I slept on this movie for a long time. I watched it. I didn't appreciate it until just last night where I watched it. And we had a really good time with it. I think it's a fantastic film. Atkins is phenomenal as always. Jamie Lee Curtis, great. Adrienne Barbeau, fantastic. John Carpenter and Deborah Hill as writers and Carpenter's directing. Janet Leigh, Buck Flowers, who we didn't even reference in this, who is in They Live.
Yeah.
Everybody in this movie is great. I'm definitely going to give this a 6 out of There Must Be 6.
Oh.
Whoa. Thank you, Ben. All right, Steve, hit us with your final thoughts for the film The Fog.
I think The Fog is very fun, and I regret my opinion of it being so low for so long, strictly out of just not giving it enough respect for a revisit. And I'm glad we finally got to it in this month, the month of madness. I actually kind of want to watch it again, and I'm interested to know what you have to think about the remake, Ben. So when you finish watching that, let me know, and maybe I'll check that one out as well.
Hopefully that'll be tonight. Yeah, I'm curious.
I have no idea if I've seen it or not. There are plenty of movies that came out in around 2005 to 2008 where I just saw so many movies because I was working at the movie theater, and some of them just didn't stick, did not stick in my mind. So I'd be interested. If I had to give this movie a rating, I give it a deep peer into the fog, followed by a hook to the neck. Don't know if that's good or bad, but depends on if you like fog or hook. I don't know.
All right, thank you, Steve. Well, what an interesting horror film as only John Carpenter can do. It's less genre-bendy than his other films, and it's a little bit more in the Halloween style. And we think we covered what that means throughout this review. Only so much better. That's right.
Debatable.
That's right. There was no real wasted motion, almost to a fault. There were lots of parts that I felt like, what happened? Move to the next thing. But that's okay. Sometimes old movies try to do too much. Its ambience with the cinematography and the score were on point, and the vibe was unsettling in the best way. The murders were shown, and there wasn't really the old horror cutaway. Just show it, especially if it's not going to be bloody. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to get away with the rating if it's not going to have all kinds of gore and blood. Just show it and don't cut away. Bibbidi bobbidi boo. I give this a 3.7 out of 5. I recommend it for fans of John Carpenter and horror. And I give this movie a trawler full of drunk guys, but it's bordered by awesome zombie fishermen or pirates.
Zombie ghost lepers?
Zombie ghost lepers. Oh, thank you. I really feel like this was a great way to start the month, but also like I usually have this problem where I feel like we're not going to be able to talk about a movie, but this one I knew we were going to be able to talk about it for the exact right amount of time, you know? Like there wasn't too much to like really dwell on. And I think John Carpenter movies kind of do that well, where that's the movie, you said the things that happened and there's not a whole lot extra because there doesn't need to be, and he has such a vision that you just... But this one there was a lot to speculate on because there was so many like disjointed bits. But with that said, that brings us to Ben. Would you like to maybe, do a little pluggy? Got something on the board you'd like to talk about?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm assuming anybody watching who's seen me here before knows that I'm a co-host of the BS Bargain Bin podcast. You find us everywhere at bsbargainbin.com, Facebook, BS Bargain Bin, Twitter or X at BS Bargain Bin. Really, our fun times are on YouTube, where you can catch the BS Bargain Bin and Channel Surfing, which is another show we do where we cover the first season of a TV show episode by episode. Just having fun times, me and my co-host Sandro. So we'll have guests on randomly. Jason, you've been on before. Hopefully we'll have you on again soon. And I just want to say thanks for having me on. It's always fun talking to you, dude.
Awesome. Yeah, I hope you'll have Steve on as well, because he likes to talk about movies as well. And Psycroat, thanks for hanging out. That's, of course, the BS Bargain Bin pod show co-host. He said something funny here. It's bullshit. He offers himself and the cross up, and they just take the cross, and later it's like, psych, which I thought was funny. And then... the BS Bargain Bin podcast is, of course, endorsed by Adam Green. There's a video up on their Facebook right now of the movie Crypt. Is that the Adam Green and Joe Lynch podcast where they talk about Ben's show, Ben and Sandro's show? What's up, Grantes the Mantis? Welcome in. We're shutting it down. Yeah, I just really quickly want to say what I said at the top of the show. It's your call to action. Please like, subscribe on all social media. You can find 100 audio episodes on Spotify and Apple. You can find all of our episodes, minus maybe 3 now, up on YouTube. Those have slowly been getting released. It's been a year-long project to get all of the stuff online. All of our audio is going up on YouTube tomorrow, so look out for that. You can find us on all social media at Hey Did You See This One. This has been a fantastic show. Stay tuned for a couple minutes. I got one last thing that I'm going to play for everybody. But as I ask each and every week, and now what I do is I ask the host to say it. Ben, do you have a question you'd like to ask all the people?
Yeah, it was, hey, did you see this one?
You have to keep in mind that being a director doesn't mean that you're making what you want to make. More often than not, as a director, you're an employee working for the producer, and you're doing what they want in your style as they see fit. I think over time, he became cynical because he was being forced to make bigger movies with a larger budget, but not a budget large enough to make the movie that people wanted him to make, because he did so well with lower budgets, with like Escape from New York. I think if you want a John Carpenter film to be successful, give him the minimal amount of money that he needs to tell the story that he wants. that he's happy with and give it a wider release. The people are there to pay for it, and they will go watch it. Like, there are so many fans of his early stuff. It's as his budgets expanded, as the expectations grew to be blockbusters, to be crazy action films. He's not an action director. He's a drama, he's a horror director. So when you're expecting multi-million-dollar box office results from somebody who's not specialized in doing what you're expecting them to draw, what do you think is going to happen? Just let him do what he's good at, give it a wider release. In the end, it's going to be cheaper, and you're going to see a bigger profit off of it.
I think that he also sort of became disillusioned by the fact that, you know, he's very creative. He has a good understanding of how to like put a person on screen, and is responsible for several people becoming really famous in their careers. But he also was met with people having been so impacted by his own movies that people started making John Carpenter movies that were better than John Carpenter movies that he could make. And like he would see movies that reminded him so much of his own movies that he was like, I think that there is a younger generation now that are making the same things that I would like to make, but they're making it better.
One of those people.
He's watching his craft be perfected by people that were inspired by him, which, you know, probably feels.
Think he's happy about that, and he can like sit back.
Well, I was gonna say it's probably like a double-edged sword, where he's probably happy about the fact that he's influenced people to make something that he would love to make, but seeing them make it better than him is like, well, I'm not needed here anymore. Like, my job is done. Like, I've seen what I would want to make and how I'd want to make it being made better than maybe I could have made it.
That's an amazing point I never considered.
And it's kind of sad, but at the same time, it's like kind of nice, you know? Like, it means that, you know, he has like a nice lush career. He made what, like 19, 20 movies, something like that. And each and every one of them has clearly inspired somebody, because you can almost pinpoint a singular moment in any one of his movies that has been either homaged or completely ripped off or like redone in a loving way. And like, that's pretty fucking cool.
Is it over?